The kiss tasted like goodbye. Violet's hands trembled against Minsu's chest, feeling his heart slam against her palms as his fingers tangled in her hair. The rooftop wind whipped around them, cold and merciless, but neither pulled away. This was the last time. They both knew it. When they finally broke apart, Minsu kept his forehead pressed to hers, his breath ragged. "Vi, don't!" Her voice cracked. "Please don't make this harder." His thumb traced her cheekbone, catching a tear. "I love you. That's why I have to let you go." Violet's chest felt like it was caving in. She watched as he reached into his jacket and pulled out a faded red ribbon, the same one he'd tied around her wrist 12 years ago, the one she'd kept in her drawer, worn thin from all the time she'd held it and wondered if he was still alive. He pressed it into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "Keep it this time, so you remember I kept my promise. I found you. I'll never forget you." The words barely made it past her throat. Minsu stepped back. One step, then another. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning with something that looked like pain and love and finality all at once. If he stayed another second, he wouldn't leave. They both knew that, too. Violet watched him disappear down the stairwell, the ribbon cutting into her palm from how hard she was gripping it. She didn't call him back. She didn't run after him. Because loving him meant this, letting him go, choosing herself. But God, it was destroying her. Before you find out if they'll find their way back to each other, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Do you think Violet made the right choice, or should love always win? Let me know below. To understand how they got here, you have to go back 12 years. Violet Miller was 9 years old the first time she saw the boy behind the fence. It was November, and the Bronx playground at PS 394 smelled like wet leaves and the pretzel cart on the corner. Violet sat on the far bench during lunch, away from the other kids who had money for hot lunches or at least full sandwiches. She had half a peanut butter sandwich and an apple her mom had packed that morning before her double shift. That's when she noticed him. A boy, maybe her age, crouched behind the chain-link fence that separated the playground from the alley. His clothes hung off him like they belonged to someone bigger. His hair was matted, but it was his eyes that made Violet freeze. Dark, hollow, watching the other kids eat with the kind of hunger that made her stomach hurt just looking at him. She glanced at her sandwich, then back at him. The next day, she broke her sandwich in half and walked to the fence. The boy tensed like he might run. "Hey," Violet said softly. She pushed half the sandwich through the gap in the chain-link fence. "You hungry?" He stared at it, then at her, like he was trying to figure out if this was a trick. "It's okay. I already ate my half." A lie. She was starving, but he looked worse. Slowly, he reached through and took it. He didn't say thank you. He just ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Maybe he hadn't. Violet came back the next day, and the next. For 6 months, she split her lunch with the boy behind the fence. She learned his name eventually, Minsu. He spoke broken English mixed with Korean words she didn't understand. He never told her where he lived or why he was alone, but every day he was there. Until the day he wasn't. It was May. Violet showed up with her usual sandwich, but the spot behind the fence was empty. She waited. He didn't come. She went back every day for 15 days. Nothing. On the 15th day, she found a red ribbon tied to the fence where he used to sit, the same one she'd given it a while ago. Attached to it was a note in shaky handwriting. "When I'm somebody, I'll find you. I promise. M." Violet untied the ribbon and held it tight. She didn't cry, even though something in her chest felt hollow. She just whispered to the empty alley, "Okay, I'll wait." She kept that ribbon for 12 years. Present day. Violet Miller was 31 years old now, and she'd stopped waiting for ghosts a long time ago. She stood at the front of the Bronx Community Center, her community center, facing a room packed with angry residents. The meeting had been going for an hour, and tensions were rising. A development company called Meridian Holdings wanted to buy up half the block, and everyone knew what that meant. Higher rents, displacement, another neighborhood swallowed by luxury condos no one here could afford. "They're offering pennies," Mrs. Chen said, her voice shaking. She'd lived in her apartment for 30 years. "Where am I supposed to go?" Violet held up her hands. "We're not going anywhere. We fight this together. I've contacted legal aid and we're filing." The door at the back of the room opened. Her words died in her throat. 3 men walked in. 2 of them were built like walls, dressed in dark suits that screamed money and danger. But it was the man in the middle that made the air shift. He was tall, sharp-featured, with black hair swept back and a presence that made everyone turn to look. His suit probably looked very expensive and like it was made just for him. Heck, it probably was. But it wasn't the money that stopped her heart. It was his eyes. Dark, intense, searching the room until they landed on her and froze. Violet felt the ground tilt. No, it couldn't be. "Who the hell are you?" James, one of the community organizers, stood up, stepping protectively towards the front. The man didn't look away from Violet. "Kang Min-soo, I represent Meridian Holdings." The room exploded, shouting, accusations. Someone threw a wadded-up paper towards the back, but Violet couldn't hear any of it. In fact, the room could have been empty. All she could hear was the roar of blood in her ears. Min-soo. Her Min-soo. The boy behind the fence. The boy she'd fed. The boy who'd promised to come back. He'd come back. As a monster.
Min-soo's eyes hadn't left hers. Even as James shouted at him to get out, even as Mrs. Chen called him a vulture, he just stood there, staring at Violet like she was the only person in the room. And God help her, she couldn't look away either. "Everyone calm down." Violet's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. The room quieted, but the tension stayed thick. She forced herself to focus, to be the leader they needed, not the girl whose world had just tilted sideways. "Mr. Kang, this is a community meeting. Unless you're here to withdraw your company's offer, you need to leave." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of how much she hated him right now. "I'm here to discuss terms," he said, his voice low and controlled. American accent now, with just a ghost of Korean underneath. "To find a solution that works for everyone." "There is no solution." Violet's hands clenched at her sides. "You can't buy people's homes and call it progress. We don't want your money. We want you gone." Vi. The nickname hit her like a punch. No one called her that. No one except... The windows exploded. Glass shattered inward as gunfire ripped through the community center. Violet heard screaming, saw people diving for cover. Her brain couldn't process it fast enough. This is her center, her safe space. How is this happening? Then she was on the ground, a solid weight covering her, shielding her as bullets tore through the air above them. "Stay down," he growled in her ear. "Don't move." More gunfire. But this time it was returning fire. Min-soo's men, they were more now, all in similar suits, shooting back with a precision that said they'd done this 1,000,000 times. The attack lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then silence, broken only by car tires squealing away and the sound of people crying. Min-soo pulled back slightly, his hands moving over her face, her shoulders, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Vi, look at me. Are you hurt?" She shoved him off, adrenaline and fury flooding her system. "Get away from me!" But when she looked around the room, her anger dissolved into horror. Mr. Patterson was bleeding from his arm. Shanice was hyperventilating in the corner. The walls were pocked with bullet holes. Her center, her safe space, destroyed. "This is because of you," Violet said, her voice shaking as she turned back to Min-soo. "You brought this here." He stood slowly, brushing glass off his suit. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw was tight. "That wasn't meant for them. It was meant for me." "And that makes it better?" She wanted to scream. "You show up after 12 years and suddenly my neighborhood is a war zone?" "I didn't know you were here." His voice dropped, rough with something that sounded like desperation. "If I'd known." "You'd what? You'd have destroyed some other neighborhood instead?" Violet stepped closer, her hands balling into fists. "You were my best friend. I gave you the only food I had. How did you turn into this?" The words hit him like bullets. She saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes went dark. I turned into someone who survived, he quietly said. Someone who could come back for you. I didn't ask you to. You tied a ribbon around my wrist and told me everything would be okay. His voice was raw now, all that control cracking. You were the only person who ever... He stopped, breathed. We need to get you somewhere safe. They'll come back. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm calling the police like a normal person. They'll figure out who this is and why. Violet. He said her full name like a prayer, like he'd been holding it in his mouth for 12 years. Please. They know you're important to me now. They saw me protect you. That makes you a target. Important to you? She laughed, but it sounded broken. You don't even know me. I know you still carry butterscotch candies in your pocket because you hand them out to kids at the center. I know you take the 6 train home every night at exactly 8:47. I know you haven't missed a Sunday dinner with your mom in 3 years. His eyes burned into hers. I know you kept the ribbon. Violet's blood went cold. You've been watching me? I've been looking for you since the day I left that alley, he said, taking a step closer. 5 years of searching, buying properties in every neighborhood you might be, funding programs that might lead me to you, and when I finally found you 6 months ago. 6 months? Her voice pitched higher. You've known where I was for 6 months, and you didn't... She stopped, the pieces clicking with sickening clarity. Meridian Holdings. You bought these buildings because I'm here. He didn't deny it. You're destroying my neighborhood to get to me? I'm protecting it. His voice was firm now, certain. Every building I buy is one less place for the Russians or the Triads to move in. I control this territory, which means I control who gets hurt and who doesn't. You don't get to play God. I'm not playing. The coldness in his voice made her step back. This is my world, Vi. I built it brick by brick so I'd never be that starving kid behind a fence again. So I'd be strong enough to find you and keep you safe. I didn't need you to keep me safe. But even as she said it, she looked at the bullet holes, the blood, the terrified faces of her community. I need you to leave us alone. I can't do that. Why not? Because I love you. He said it simply, like it was a fact, like he'd been carrying it for 12 years and was tired of holding it in. I've loved you since I was 9 years old and you gave me half your sandwich, and I will burn down anyone who tries to hurt you. Violet felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. The boy I fed wouldn't have become this. The boy you fed died in the streets. Minsu's voice was hard, but his eyes were haunted. I'm what crawled out.
The police came. Statements were taken. Violet watched Minsu's men vanish before the cops arrived, like smoke dissipating into air. Minsu himself stayed just long enough to ensure everyone was accounted for, then disappeared through a side exit with one last look at Violet that she felt in her bones. By the time she got everyone settled and the center locked up, it was nearly midnight. Her hands were still shaking as she walked to the subway station. She made it half a block before the black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Minsu sat in the back seat, his face carved from shadows. Get in. Go to hell. They're following you. 2 cars back, gray sedan. Violet's spine went rigid. She didn't turn around, didn't give any indication she'd heard him, but she saw it in her peripheral vision, a gray sedan crawling along the curb, staying just far enough back to seem coincidental. Please, Vi. The way he said her name made her heart flutter in a way that was new to her. She hated herself for it, but she got in the car. The door hadn't even closed before Minsu was talking into his phone in rapid Korean. The SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly, and Violet watched through the side mirror as the gray sedan tried to follow. Tried. 2 motorcycles appeared out of nowhere, boxing it in, forcing it to stop. What did you do? Violet demanded. Kept you alive. He pocketed his phone and finally looked at her. Really looked at her. You cut your hair. Of all the things he could have said, that's what he led with. Violet touched her shoulder-length locks self-consciously. That's what you want to talk about? My hair? I'm trying to figure out how to talk to you without you looking at me like a monster. Maybe because you are one. He absorbed that like a blow. Fair enough.
They drove in silence for a few minutes. Violet watched the Bronx give way to Manhattan, the buildings getting taller, the streets getting cleaner. When the SUV pulled up to a high-rise in Tribeca, she balked. "I'm not going up there with you." "You can go home," Minsu said evenly, "and they'll be waiting for you. Or you can come upstairs where there are 12 armed guards and a very efficient security system." He met her eyes. "Your choice. Always your choice." Violet wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to take his protection and shove it, but she thought about her mom, about what would happen if these people, whoever they were, couldn't get to Violet and went after her family instead. She got out of the car. The penthouse was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost a fortune, art on the walls that looked old and expensive. It was beautiful and cold and nothing like the boys she remembered. "Guest room is down the hall," Minsu said, shrugging off his jacket. There was blood on his shirt sleeve, not his, she realized, from when he'd covered her. "You'll be safe here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out." "Why did you really come to that meeting?" Violet interrupted. She needed answers more than she needed sleep. "The truth."
He poured himself a drink from the bar, whiskey, neat, and downed it in one swallow. "Because I'd been looking for you for 5 years, and 6 months ago I finally found you. And I've been trying to figure out how to approach you without scaring you, how to explain what I've become, how to—" He laughed, but it was bitter. "How to make you not hate me." "So you decided to buy my neighborhood?" "I decided to protect it." He set the glass down hard. "Do you know what happens to neighborhoods like yours without protection? The Russians move in, the triads. They bleed people dry, Vi. They hurt people. I might be a monster, but at least I'm a monster who remembers what it's like to be powerless." "So what? You're a benevolent crime lord?" Violet's voice dripped with sarcasm. "How noble!" "I never said I was noble." He moved closer, and she hated how her body responded, how her pulse kicked up. "I said I was in love with you. There's a difference." "You don't know me." "I know you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I know you work 70-hour weeks and won't take a salary because you'd rather the money go to programs. I know you visit Mrs. Chen every Tuesday with groceries because her son never calls." He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker and addictive. "I know you still have nightmares about your dad leaving. I know you take the long way home past the old playground sometimes, like you're looking for something you lost." Violet's breath caught. "Stop." "I know you, Violet Miller." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Maybe not the woman you are now, but I know the girl who saved my life, and I see her in everything you do. That girl would be disgusted by what you've become." "I know." He said it so simply it hurt. "But she'd also understand why." Violet wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to her righteous fury. But looking at him, really looking at him, she saw the scared boy behind the fence. She saw the hunger, the desperation, the will to survive at any cost. She saw herself in him. "I can't be part of your world," she said finally. "I'm not asking you to be." "Then what are you asking?" Minsu reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek so gently it made her chest ache. "Let me keep you safe. That's all. I won't touch the center. I'll pull back the development. Just let me do this one thing." "Why?" "Because you gave me your sandwich when you were starving." His thumb traced her jawline. "Because you're the only good thing I ever had, and I won't let them take you away from me again." Violet should have said no, should have walked out, should have called the police, her mom, anyone. Instead, she leaned into his touch just for a second, just long enough to feel human. "One night. Tomorrow I go home, and you stay away from me." His hand dropped. "If that's what you want." "It's what we need." But neither of them moved. They stood there in that expensive penthouse, two people from different worlds, connected by a red ribbon and a childhood promise that never should have lasted this long. "I missed you," Min-soo said quietly. "Every day, even when I didn't know your name or your face, I missed you." Violet felt something crack open in her chest. "I kept the ribbon. I know. I hated you for leaving. I know that too. She should walk away. She should—" Violet kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was 12 years of anger and grief and longing crashing together like a storm. Min-soo made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her locks like he'd described, like he'd imagined this 1,000 times. She tasted the whiskey on his tongue, felt the way his heart slammed against his ribs. This was wrong. This was so wrong. He was everything she stood against, everything she'd spent her life fighting. But God, it felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Violet pressed her forehead to his chest. "This doesn't change anything. I still hate what you've become." "I know. But She couldn't say it, couldn't give him that. Min-soo's arms tightened around her. "I know, Vi. I know. You don't have to say anything."
Violet didn't leave the next morning, or the morning after that. She told herself it was practical. The Volkovs were still a threat, and staying in Min-see's penthouse was safer than going home. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. She didn't want to leave. On the third morning, she woke up to find Min-soo in the kitchen making breakfast. Actual cooking, not just ordering from some expensive restaurant. He stood at the stove in a t-shirt and sweatpants, flipping pancakes with the kind of concentration most people reserved for surgery. "You cook?" Violet leaned against the doorframe, watching him. He glanced over his shoulder, and the smile that crossed his face was so genuine it hurt. "You think I survived on the streets without learning? Sit, these are almost ready." She sat at the island, watching him plate the pancakes with the same precision he probably used for everything else. When he slid the plate in front of her, she noticed he'd made them into a shape, a lopsided heart. "Really?" But she was smiling. "Shut up and eat." They tasted like childhood and safety, and something Violet didn't have a name for. She looked up to find Min-soo watching her with an expression so soft it made her chest ache. "What?" she asked. "I've imagined this," he said quietly, 1,000 different ways. "You, here, safe. And how does it compare to your imagination?" "Better." He reached across the island and laced his fingers with hers. "So much better." That afternoon, Min-soo took her to a Korean restaurant in Koreatown, a tiny place tucked between a nail salon and a grocery store. The owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, lit up when she saw Min-soo. "Aigu, Min-soo-ya!" She rushed over, speaking rapid Korean and patting his cheeks like he was still a child. Min-soo responded in Korean, his whole demeanor shifting. Softer, younger. He glanced at Violet and switched to English. "Mrs. Park, this is Violet. Vi, this is the woman who gave me my first real job when I was 14. Mrs. Park's eyes went shrewd as she looked between them. "So this is the girl, the one you talk about." "I don't talk about—" "He talks about you," Mrs. Park said to Violet, ignoring Min-soo's protest. "For years, he says, when I find her, when I'm good enough for her. I tell him, Min-soo-ya, no one is ever good enough. You just try your best." She patted Violet's hand. "You eat. I bring you everything good." She disappeared into the kitchen before either of them could protest. Violet turned to Min-soo, eyebrows raised. "You talk about me?" "She's exaggerating." "She called you Min-soo-ya. That's affectionate." He shifted uncomfortably. "She knew me before I became this." "Does she know what you do?" "She knows enough, and she still feeds me anyway." He met Violet's eyes. "Some people see past the monster." "I don't see a monster. I see someone who's scared of being hungry again." Min-soo's throat worked. Before he could respond, Mrs. Park returned with enough food to feed 6 people. As they ate, Violet watched Min-soo relax in a way she hadn't seen before. He told her stories about working in the restaurant, burning rice, dropping dishes, Mrs. Park yelling at him in Korean while secretly making sure he ate 3 meals a day. "She saved my life," he said quietly. "Not the dramatic way, just consistently, every day. She gave me a reason to show up. Like someone else I know. The fence, the sandwiches. Yeah, like someone else." His hand found hers under the table, like someone else. That night, back at the penthouse, they sat on the couch with a bottle of wine neither of them was really drinking. Violet had her feet tucked under her head on his chest with his arms around her. This felt comfortable. It was natural, like they had done it 1,000 times before. The city glittered below them, a million lights that felt like they belonged to someone else's world. "Tell me something," Violet said. "Something real. Not about the syndicate or the violence, just you." Min-soo was quiet for a long moment. "I'm afraid of the dark." She blinked. "What?" Ironic, right? The ghost of the underworld, afraid of the dark. He stared into his wineglass. "When I was on the streets, the worst things happened at night. I learned to stay awake, to keep watch. Even now, I barely sleep. 3-4 hours a night, max." Violet's heart cracked open. Min-soo! He had nightmares about being back there, being powerless, being that kid again. He finally looked at her. "But since you've been here, I've slept 6 hours a night, because I know you're safe, because you're here." Violet set down her wineglass and moved closer, tucking herself against his side. His arm came around her immediately, like he'd been waiting for permission. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Of this, of you, of how much I want this to work. We can make it work. Can we?" She tilted her head back to look at him. "Your world and mine, they're opposites. Then we build a new world." His hand came up to cup her face. "Just ours." When he kissed her this time, it was different from that first desperate collision. This was slow, deliberate, full of promise. His thumbs stroked her cheekbone as his lips moved against hers, tasting like wine and hope and all the things she'd stopped letting herself want. "Stay," he murmured against her mouth. "Not because it's safer, because you want to." "I want to," she whispered back. "God help me. I want to." The next few weeks blurred together like a dream. Min-soo took her to his favorite bookstore in the village, a cramped place that smelled like old paper and possibility. She discovered he read poetry, Korean poets she'd never heard of, their words about longing and loss and searching for home. "This one," he said, showing her a passage. "I read it every night for 5 years. Even in darkness, I remember the taste of light." He looked at her. "You have always been my light, V." She brought him to the community center, showed him the after-school programs, the job training, the way she'd built something that actually helped people. He watched her interact with the kids, learned she knew all their names, their stories, their dreams. "This is what I'm fighting for," she told him as they walked through the neighborhood. "Not just buildings, people, community, the things that make life worth living." "I know." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "And I swear to you, V, no more development projects, no more displacement. I'll use my influence to protect these neighborhoods, not destroy them." "You do that?" "I'd do anything for you." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "I have been, for 12 years. That night they lay in his bed. Her choice to be there, her decision to cross that line. Min-soo held her like she was precious, like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. They talked until dawn, about everything and nothing. She told him about her father leaving, about learning to be strong because there was no other choice. He told her about Korea, the fragments he remembered, his mother's voice, the smell of street food, the feeling of being wanted before the world took that away. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "No. Everything I want is here." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "You're here." Violet felt herself falling. No, she'd already fallen. This was just her finally admitting it. "I love you," she said into the darkness. "I don't want to. It would be easier if I didn't, but I do."
Minsu's arms tightened around her. "I've loved you since I was 9 years old. I'll love you until I stop breathing. That's a long time. Not long enough." For 5 perfect weeks, Violet let herself believe in fairy tales. She split her time between the center and the penthouse, between her world and his. Minsu came to community meetings, wrote anonymous checks to struggling families, used his influence to keep predatory developers away. She met more of his people, not just the dangerous ones, but the ones like Mrs. Park, people he'd helped, protected, saved. Maybe this could work. Maybe love really was enough. Then James called. "Violet, you need to see this." His voice was tight with anger. She was at Minsu's place, curled up on the couch with a book while he worked in his office. "See what?" "Just get down here, please." 20 minutes later, Violet stood in front of the community center staring at the new storefront across the street. A high-end coffee shop, minimalist design, prices that cost more than most people in the neighborhood made in a day. "It opened yesterday," Marcus said, "right after that bodega closed. You know the one that's been here for 30 years? Suddenly the rent tripled and they couldn't afford it anymore." Violet's blood went cold. "Who owns the building?" "Shell Corporation, but V." Marcus pulled up something on his phone. "I did some digging. It traces back to Jade Circle Holdings." The world tilted. "No, he wouldn't." "Wouldn't he?" Marcus's voice was hard. "He's a criminal, V. This is what they do. They gentrify neighborhoods, push people out, make everything unaffordable. And you've been—" He stopped himself. "People are talking. They see you with him. They're wondering whose side you're on." Violet felt sick. "I need to talk to him." She drove back to the penthouse, her hands shaking on the wheel. This had to be a mistake. Minsu had promised. He'd sworn he wouldn't. She found him in his office, on the phone, speaking Korean. He looked up when she entered, smiled, then saw her face and immediately ended the call. "V, what's wrong?" "Did you buy the building across from my center?" His expression shuddered. "Let me explain. Yes or no?" "Yes, but you promised." Her voice cracked. "You promised you'd protect the neighborhood, not—" "I am protecting it." He stood, came around the desk. "That bodega was a front for a drug operation. The owners were part of a trafficking ring. I couldn't just— V, I had to move them out." "By tripling the rent? By putting in a coffee shop that nobody in the neighborhood can afford?" "The coffee shop is temporary. I'm working with a local business owner to—" "Stop." Violet held her hand. "Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're justifying it, making it sound reasonable. But at the end of the day, you pushed someone out. You changed the neighborhood. You became exactly what I'm fighting against." "I was protecting you," his voice rose. "That trafficking ring, they were planning to kidnap you, use you as leverage against me. I had to shut them down, and the fastest way was economic pressure." "So this is my fault? People are getting displaced because of me?" "No, that's not what I meant. But it's true." Violet felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Everything you do, every decision you make, it all comes back to protecting me, and people get hurt because of it. I won't apologize for keeping you safe." "I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to see what this is doing." She gestured between them. "I can't fight gentrification by day and sleep with the person causing it at night. I can't be a community leader while dating a crime lord. It doesn't work. Then I'll step back. But you can't." And suddenly Violet saw it all so clearly. This is who you are. You protect through control, through power, through doing whatever it takes. And maybe that's necessary in your world, but it destroys everything in mine.
Minsu looked like she punched him. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying—" She couldn't breathe. "I'm saying this doesn't work." "Yes, it does. Violet, we can—" "How?" She moved closer, desperate for him to understand. "How do we make this work? You want me to accept that people will get hurt because you love me? You want me to stop fighting for my community because it conflicts with your business? Or do you want to give up everything you've built? Stop being who you are?" "I'd give it up." He said it instantly. "For you, I'd walk away from all of it." And that's when Violet realized the terrible truth. "I don't want you to." Minsu froze. "I don't want you to give up your empire for me," she said, tears finally falling. "Because then you'd resent me. Maybe not now, maybe not for years, but eventually you'd look at me and see everything you sacrificed, everything you lost. That would never happen. It would. And I'd see it in your eyes every day. I'd know I'd taken away the thing that made you feel safe, the power that kept you from being that scared kid behind the fence. She touched his face, memorizing the feel of him. I love you too much to do that to you. Vi, his voice broke on her name. And I love myself too much to give up my work, to compromise my values, to become someone who looks the other way while people suffer. She smiled sadly. We're both too strong to bend, Minsu, and that means we'll break each other instead. Don't do this. He pulled her close, his forehead pressed to hers. Please, we'll find a way. There is no way. She was sobbing now. Don't you see? Loving you means watching you hurt people. Staying with you means becoming complicit, and I can't. I won't. Then I'll change. I'll go legitimate. And stop protecting your people? The ones who depend on you? Mrs. Park and all the others you've helped. You'd have to let them go, leave them vulnerable. Could you do that? His silence was answer enough. We can make this work, Violet. I've searched for you for 12 years. I'm not giving up now. And God, she wanted to believe him, wanted to say yes, wanted to pretend love was enough. Okay, she whispered. His head snapped up. What? Okay. She kissed him, tasting salt and heartbreak. The relief in his eyes nearly destroyed her, because Violet knew, even as she said yes, even as she let him hold her, even as she promised to try, she knew this was a lie. She was saying yes because she loved him, but she'd have to say no because she loved herself more.
For 3 days, Violet tried. She woke up in Minsu's arms and told herself this could work. She went to the center and ignored the whispers, the looks from people who'd seen her getting out of his car. She sat in community meetings and felt like a fraud, knowing the man she loved controlled half the city's underworld. Minsu tried too. He pulled back from operations, delegated more to his lieutenants, spent his evenings with her instead of managing his empire. But she saw the tension in his shoulders when his phone rang with emergencies he wasn't handling, saw the way his jaw tightened when she asked him to skip a meeting to come to a community fundraiser. They were both pretending, both suffocating. On the 4th morning, Violet woke up before dawn and couldn't breathe. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Minsu, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city. Manhattan glittered below her, beautiful and cold and built on 1,000 compromises she didn't know if she could make. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. Another family displaced on Morrison Ave. They're saying Jade Circle bought the building. Is this you? Her stomach dropped. She pulled up the news. Sure enough, 3 families evicted to make way for luxury condos. The building had been purchased 2 weeks ago, right when she and Minsu had started this. She heard him before she saw him. Footsteps on the hardwood, then his arms around her waist, his chin on her shoulder. You're up early? Minsu. She kept her voice steady. Morrison Avenue. Did you buy that building? He felt tense. It was already in motion before we... Did you stop it? Silence. You could have stopped it, she said quietly. You have the power, you just didn't. It's complicated. There are investors involved, contracts already signed. There are families involved, 3 of them, with children. They have nowhere to go. I'll make sure they're compensated. I'll find them new housing. That's not the point. She pulled away from him, needing space. The point is you didn't even think to stop it, because in your world, this is normal. This is just business. In my world, I have to think about 100 different factors. And in my world, I have to look those families in the eye and tell them I'm fighting for them while sleeping with the person who made them homeless. Her voice broke. I can't do this, Minsu. I thought I could, but I can't. Vi, please. I love you, she said it clearly, needing him to understand. I love you so much it's killing me. But every day I stay with you, I betray everything I believe in. Every day I become less of who I am. Then I'll stop. He moved toward her, desperate. I'll walk away from it all. No. She put her hand on his chest, stopping him. I told you I don't want you to do that, because you'd hate me for it eventually, and I hate myself for asking. So what, we just give up? His voice was raw. After everything, after 12 years of searching, after finding each other, we just walk away? Sometimes love means knowing when to let go. Tears streamed down her face. You taught me that. When you were 9 years old and you left that alley, even though it broke your heart, you did it because staying would have put me in danger. You chose what was best for me over what you wanted. That's different. It's not. She touched his face, memorizing every detail. You can't be who you need to be and give me what I need. And I can't be who I need to be and give you what you need. We're destroying each other, slowly, painfully. I don't care. His hands came up to cover hers. I'd rather be destroyed by loving you than whole without you. But I care. She pulled his hands down, holding them between them. I care about you too much to watch you become less than you are, and I care about myself too much to become someone I don't recognize. Minsu's face crumpled. Vi, come with me. She tugged his hand. One last time, please.
She led him to the rooftop, the same place where this had started, where she'd told him no before saying yes. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The city was waking up around them, a million lives being lived in the space between their breaking hearts. I need you to understand something, Violet said, turning to face him. Choosing myself, it's not because I don't love you enough. It's because I love you too much to let either of us become someone we're not. I know, his voice was thick. I know, Vi, but knowing doesn't make it hurt less. No, she stepped closer. It doesn't. They stood there, the space between them charged with everything they couldn't say, everything they couldn't be. Finally, Minsu reached for her, pulling her close one last time. I don't know how to let you go, he whispered against her hair. Me neither. If things were different, they're not, she pulled back to look at him, and maybe that's okay. Maybe we were only meant to save each other once, when we were kids. Everything after, maybe that's just us trying to recreate something that already served its purpose. Don't say that, his grip tightened. Don't make this smaller than it is. I'm not. I'm making it what it needs to be. A beautiful thing we have to release before it becomes ugly. Minsu's eyes were bright with unshed tears. One more, please. Just one more. Violet knew what he was asking for, and even though it would destroy her, even though it would make leaving impossible, she couldn't deny him this, couldn't deny herself. She kissed him. It was nothing like their first kiss, desperate and hungry and claiming. This was soft and slow and tasted like goodbye. His hands cradled her face like she was made of glass. Her fingers tangled in his hair, trying to memorize the feeling. They poured everything into it, all the love, all the grief, all the might-have-beens that would never be. When they finally broke apart, both their faces were wet with tears. Minsu pressed his forehead to hers, his breath ragged. I'll never stop loving you. I know. I'll never stop either. If you ever need anything, I won't. I had to be firm about this. We can't do halfway, Minsu. We can't be friends or occasional lovers or anything in between. It has to be clean. How is this clean? His voice broke. This is the messiest thing I've ever felt. Because we're choosing it. She cupped his face, making him look at her. We're choosing what's best for each other, even though it's killing us. That's love, Minsu. Real love. Minsu pulled the red ribbon from his pocket, the one she'd kept for 12 years, the one he'd returned to her. He pressed it into her hand, closing her fingers around it. Keep it this time, so you remember I kept my promise. I found you. I'll never forget you. The words came out as a sob. Minsu stepped back. Once. Twice. Each step looked like it was killing him. Be safe, Vi. Change the world. Fight the good fight. You too. She managed a broken smile. Be the person Mrs. Park sees, the one who remembers what it's like to be hungry. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs. Violet watched him go, every instinct screaming at her to call him back, to say she'd changed her mind, to say they could make it work if they just tried harder. But she didn't, because loving him meant this, letting him be who he was, choosing herself even when it felt impossible. At the stairwell, Min-soo stopped, turned back. His eyes found hers across the rooftop, and for a moment, just a moment, the whole world narrowed down to just them. Two kids who'd shared a sandwich, two adults who'd shared a love too big for the space they lived in. "Goodbye, Vi," he said. "Goodbye, Min-soo." Then he was gone.
Violet stood on that rooftop as the sun rose fully, the ribbon clutched in her hand, and let herself break. She cried for the boy behind the fence, for the man he'd become, for the woman she'd had to be, for the love that was real and right and absolutely impossible. But underneath the grief, there was something else, something that felt like strength. She'd chosen herself. She'd chosen her community. She'd chosen the hard right over the easy wrong. And maybe that was its own kind of love story. 6 months later, Violet stood in front of the community center, newly renovated, fully funded by an anonymous donor she suspected but would never confirm. Inside, 40 kids were getting tutoring, 20 adults were in job training, 5 families had found affordable housing through the trust that had mysteriously appeared in her name. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "The Morrison Ave families are settled, all debts cleared. M." She deleted it without responding. That was the deal. Clean break. No contact. But sometimes, late at night, she pulled out that red ribbon and remembered the taste of his kiss, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she hung the moon. She didn't regret her choice, but God, she missed him. Across the city, in a penthouse in Tribeca, Min-soo stood at his window, looking toward the Bronx. He'd tried to clean up some operations, not for her, but because of her, because she'd shown him there was another way to have power, another way to protect people. It wasn't the same. He wasn't the same, but he was better. His phone sat dark on his desk. He drafted 100 messages to her, deleted them all. That was the deal. Clean break. No contact. But sometimes, late at night, he pulled out that red ribbon and remembered the taste of his kiss, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she hung the moon. She didn't regret her choice, but God, she missed him. Across the city, in a penthouse in Tribeca, Min-soo stood at his window, looking toward the Bronx. He'd tried to clean up some operations, not for her, but because of her, because she'd shown him there was another way to have power, another way to protect people. It wasn't the same. He wasn't the same, but he was better. His phone sat dark on his desk. He drafted 100 messages to her, deleted them all. That was the deal. Clean break. No contact. But sometimes, late at night, he pulled out that red ribbon and remembered the taste of his kiss, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she hung the moon. She didn't regret her choice, but God, she missed him. Across the city, in a penthouse in Tribeca, Min-soo stood at his window, looking toward the Bronx. He'd tried to clean up some operations, not for her, but because of her, because she'd shown him there was another way to have power, another way to protect people. It wasn't the same. He wasn't the same, but he was better. His phone sat dark on his desk. He'd drafted 100 messages to her, deleted them all. That was the deal. Clean break, no contact. But he kept a faded photo in his wallet. One his investigators had found from her elementary school. 9-year-old Violet with her bright smile, holding up a butterfly she'd drawn. On the back, he'd written in Korean, "The girl who saved my life." He didn't regret letting her go, but God, he missed her. Some loves weren't meant to last forever. Some were meant to change you, to make you better, stronger, more yourself than you'd ever been alone. To teach you that sometimes the deepest act of love is knowing to step back. Violet Miller and Kang Min-soo had saved each other twice, once with a sandwich, once with goodbye. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. If this story hit you in the feels, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that break your heart in the best way.
Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to choose yourself over someone you loved? Was Violet right to walk away, or should she have fought harder to make it work? I want to hear your stories, your heartbreaks, your triumphs. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And remember, some loves are worth fighting for. Some loves are worth walking away from. Both are acts of courage. Until next time, keep choosing yourself, Nesties. Keep loving bravely. Keep believing that the right love won't ask you to be less than you are.